Good evening and welcome to the latest in the series of the webinars organised by the Historical Dance Society. I'm Peter Barnard, I'm Chairman of HDS, and it's my delight not only to welcome you but also to host this evening's webinar. Before we get going, one or two bits of housekeeping and about how this will work. I recognise quite a number of you to our webinar series. You'll notice that you are muted. Please stay like that for the duration of the webinar, including the questions and answers at the end. In a moment we'll get going. We will probably be listening to a presentation by Steve and Andy for about 40-45 minutes, I guess, and that'll be followed by short question and answer session, and if you'd like to ask a question of either Steve or Andy or both, please type it into the chat box, and remembering to send it to everyone and to press enter once you've typed. I will pick those up. It would be really helpful if we only get questions in the chat box, because it saves me having to sift through lots of other discussion about what people will have for tea, etc. But apart from that, there are no other housekeeping necessities. This webinar is being recorded, and after a fine piece of editing by Anne Smithies overnight, it'll be put up on our YouTube channel probably tomorrow morning, alongside all of the other recordings of the webinars that we've heard and had during lockdown. Access to those recordings is free, and you don't need to be a member of HDS for that. Anyway, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Steve and Andy. They're going to be speaking about Rose Maresque, the fun of recreating a dance that gripped court and commoner. So I'd like to hand it over to Stephen Rowley.
Well, first of all, we need to sort out Andy because Anne has muted him and he can't unmute himself.
Okay, I'll need to, there we go. That's true. There we go.
Is that working? Is that working? Andy, can you unmute? Yes. Whoa, we're ready. Okay, we can go.
I've got my slime, so I can put it up again if I have another problem. But I'm expecting to mute myself and unmute myself at will. I hope that's going to be okay. Is it? Will I be doomed to?
No, you'll be all right there. You'll be all right.
Yeah.
Jolly good. Right. Okay, I'm kicking off. My name's Steve Rowley, and together with Andy, I was one of the co-founders, or really it's the two of us who really started up Rose Moresk. And most Morris dancers, and there's quite a few on here, I know, are quite familiar with the ancient pagan fertility dance theory. I'm just going to share screen. How about this? Let's do that one there. Share screen. Right. Okay, you should have the screen there. So as I said, I'm a Morris dancer. There we go. And this is my team back in the day. And like most Morris dancers, I was familiar with the ancient pagan fertility dance theory of Morris. But I always felt rather uncomfortable as I stood ready to dance as the squire proclaimed this explanation to the public, especially as there was no evidence for it. And James Fraser's theory itself had been rebutted about our pagan history of our customs, boat customs. But the problem was we Morris dancers didn't have a definitive theory to quote from to make any better speech. And then back in 1999 I founded the International Pipe and Tabor Festival, and in 2000 the festival hosted Professor John Forrest for the launch of his book, which was the history of Morris dancing 1458 to 1750. And through extensive research, he and Professor and Mike Heaney of Bodleian Library, especially through the Reed database, which I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with, for the early drama and entertainment records, had shown that Maresque was the earliest form of Morris in this country. And quite unlike the rural pagan theories that had been floating around for so long, Maresque first appears as a royal court entertainment in the 15th century. Over the years since then, it's been superseded by more sophisticated acts and dropped from royal favour and slid down the social scale to become a village street entertainment. That is a whole other story. I was really interested in the early part of this, and bingo, I thought, no more will I have to hear that old pagan fertility theory again. But 3 years later, I found myself sitting chatting to Professor John Forrest, and we were saying, why is it we were still hearing about pagan fertility dances every time a Morris team came out? Had nobody read his book? Well, not many perhaps. After all, it was written by an academic. It treated the material in a very structural and logical manner. And it was a big, thick, comprehensive book with very few pictures. Not the normal light reading for a Morris dancer. It's a pity because from my experience as a professional marketing and PR person, there was clearly a problem with Morris dancing. It was very difficult to get it accepted by the establishment, especially in relation to culture. And the pagan issue was part of that. So at that time, I was chair of the Arts Council's Southwest Dance Agency, and remember the battles to get Morris dancing on the agenda for various events, especially national dance celebrations at the Millennium Dome, I don't know if you remember that, and the Festival Hall. In autumn 2003, a few of us like-minded folks gathered in a village hall to try and put the record straight and put something more visible than a solid book to make it possible for people to see it in a possibly a larger audience, to see what early Morris dancing really looked like. So we got together, there was a group of us, Andy and I at the start, with Simon Pipe, with probably the three right at the beginning, with more that came along later. John Forrest and other academics helped us to pull out the known snippets of information, the descriptions, the context, the prints, the carvings, inventories of costumes, accounts showing the cost of silk and bells and things like that. And we gathered it all together, but we didn't have an actual choreography. And in the spirit of action research, we decided what we needed to look for was a contemporary language of the late 15th, early 16th century to work from. And that's really where Andy Richards came into his own. So is this the point I hand over to Andy? Andy is peering at the bottom of his screen. Are you ready?
Yep.
I'm going to stop the share. And you can share. Whoa, there we go.
Hi. So what was Moresk? Well, it was basically it's a dance form. It took England and other parts of Western Europe absolutely by storm in the late 15th and early 16th centuries. And if you look at this image from the Abington Manor House near where I was born, you can kind of see why. It's a pretty exciting dance, very spectacular. And of course, it's the dance that later evolved in England into the Cotswold Morris that we see today. You've got the bells, which is fabulous. You've got the energetic dancing. And perhaps some people would say, best of all, you have music from a solo pipe and tabor. and of course, you do have the fool, which is awesome. Who doesn't like a good fool? Let's face it. Right, so you've got this fashion for a number of dance forms with names sounding like Moresk, Maresque. They are basically symbolizing exotic dance in some form, typically exotic costumes, often martial arts such as swords, grappling, maybe even darts and targets, which are like the javelins and small shields that were carried by exotic fighters of the day. And we get the first really solid evidence of dancing this style in England with 1448 Guild performance in London. So, ooh, there's a nice picture down there, isn't there? Look at those lovely people down there, aren't they awesome? So we get royal patronage from Henry VII onwards. It's very fashionable. He's very politically astute. He wants to patronise the arts in a way that links him with the latest fashions and exciting things that are going on. But we still get it as well lower down the scale. So get it in small manors such as the Abington Manor that this carving is taken from around about 1500. Nowadays it's a suburb of Northampton, of course, Abington. There is typically a lady. It's Fizz in this case, but it could be lots of different ladies, of course. We had some wonderful ladies in the Rose Moresk, and she seems to be there sort of to be impressed by the dancers and to give a symbol of her favour, a rose or a ring, to her favourite dancer. I'm sure probably in that case, what do you think it's? It might be Gary. No, I think it's probably Jameson. Now, as well as written records touching all levels of society, from church ales up to guilds and up to the royal stuff, there's some wonderful iconography. So over to Steve on that.
We've got a problem that
Sorry,
Steve.
I was muted. Perhaps I should stay. Am I there now?
Yeah, you're back.
Yeah. Okay. So in Europe, we get some iconography. We get descriptions, but we also get iconography of Maresque appearing from the middle of the 15th century, and it's in mainland Europe, north and west of the Alps. So, but quite close to the Alps in particular. So Austria, Vienna, around into Germany, the edge of Switzerland, going round into the corner of France, Haute-Savoie, we get some good iconography, and all of it appears to be in the context of court entertainment. Need to go back to the. And here is one of the best carvings. This comes from the Guild house in Innsbruck, and there were a number of these panels along the on the exterior of the house. They're quite fantastic, and they show the lords and ladies watching an entertainment of these extraordinary dancers. And here we can see we've got somebody who's clearly sub-Saharan African and Indian subcontinent, and they're wearing bells on their ankles, and they've got quite extreme gestures or postures. Some of you may be familiar with the carvings of Erasmus Grasser from Munich, and we actually guess that these are probably the same troupe of dancers. You find the same characters in Innsbruck as you do in Munich. Again, the sub-Saharan African, the one, and the Indian subcontinent, and the bells on the ankles, they are quite similar characters. Now, there were other forms of iconography. I mean, these carvings are quite incredible. These came from the Guild's house in Munich. But there are a number of etchings and engravings. This is a famous one from Israel van Mechelen. He was believed to have come from Holland, but worked in Mechelen in Germany. He was one of the most prodigious engravers of the period, and a number of his designs were sold as design books for ornamental or decorative artists or decorative workers that were then transferred into silver and tapestry and things like that. This one is quite the most famous one, and as Andy was saying there, the form is quite consistent throughout these. You have a lady in the middle, and she's holding something in her hand, which in this case is an apple. Difficult to see on here, but she's and then the dancers are cavorting around in these extreme gestures with bells on their ankles, and these have got quite good codpieces or bottoms appearing, which is a feature of this dance. The music is a taborer, pipe and tabor player, and there's a fool, and there's a dog here, like there was in one or two of the other ones you find. But this is clearly a decorative design. He did a number of designs on this theme, and this drawing I particularly like. This is a clearer drawing to see. The lady here has a ring. What the lady is holding is clearly of significance, symbolic. A ring or a piece of fruit or a flower. And we've got the dancers cavorting. We have what looks like probably the same dancer but from a different musician from a different angle, and the fool over here. And the dancers are really quite extreme. This one right in the foreground here, quite extreme positions they're holding. I particularly like this one. This is Hans Leigenberger, and here you've got the scene like in Innsbruck with the lords and ladies at the top. There's the lady they're dancing to. She has an apple in her hand, and we can't make out that one. There's the taborer, and there's the fool, and here are the dancers cavorting. Not quite as young and athletic as the previous ones, and I feel we're getting into a field of parody here, and particular with the next one. Well, there's a close-up of that one, but the next one, which is by Daniel Hoffer, early 16th century, this one, and this is Maresque as a real parody here, the Maresque of the grotesques, and to encourage the dancers in their feats. The lady here has a stick of sausages and a flask of wine or beer. The musician, instead of a taborer, is playing some kind of shawm, I think. And we have grotesque dancers with they've still got the bells on them, but they're looking quite grotesque, really. Are still doing some of the extraordinary gestures and shapes, and I think that's and then we come into England. This is probably our earliest one. This is from Lancaster. It was from a pew end, and we have the musician, the taborer, the fool, 4 dancers, and a lady with a ladle here. The 4 dancers look like they come from the Morecambe and Wise school of dancing. This is the famous Betley window, around the same time, 1510, and here the central theme is Merry May, and there below it is a hobby horse, and below that is the lady holding a rose. And here we've got the dancers, the fool up the top, the taborer there, and Friar Tuck. And the lady here is Maid Marian, and at this time already, through churches and wits and ales, Morris was being attached to an existing custom of the Robin Hood play. And then we come on to Abington, and you can see we have all the same features in the Abington carving. The taborer, the dancers with the bells with the extreme gestures. There is another example in Europe of dancing backwards over a sword. The lady with the flower, and the jester with his ladle and his bladder. And the dancers here are dressed as knights of old, so they're not dressed in early 16th century costume. They're dressed as knights of old, and he's showing a fine bottom there in true Moresk fashion. So with that, I need to go back over to Andy.
Thanks, Steve. Right. Okay.
Right, well, written sources for Maresque. The written sources do give a fascinating glimpse into the world of Maresque. You've got royal records giving payments for Maresque performers and their costumes, some quite amazing amounts of money and some amazing costumes. There are sources giving information about performances that are linked to tournaments, and it must have been quite amazing to see these mock battles with dancers emerging from bits of stage scenery to impress ladies who are standing on top of cardboard castles. It must have been wow, incredible to be there. I'd have absolutely loved it. And in the early 16th century, Moresk dancing starts to be an entertainment at church ales, which are being held really to raise money for parish church maintenance. And we got an early example at Kingston in 1507. And you've got church accounts showing Morris dancers in bells with sparkling costumes and a lady, and I'm sure there would have been a pipe and tabor too, so what's not to like? Right, now, dance choreography issues. So one of the problems we have is that for the period around 1500, we've got these depictions, we've got brief accounts, we really have no undisputed dance choreography or undisputed music for English Moresque at this period. But one source we do have to consider is Toineau Arbeau's Orchesography, 1588. And it describes a solo Moresque dance performed in France in the author's youth. He was born around 1520, so perhaps the dance described was around 1540. It's a very interesting source. So, what else do we have? Well, we have the Gresley manuscript. It's a notebook of many things, actually. If you look at this picture at the top here, there are even some palmistry in there. But it's the notebook of a dancing master, and he's based in Derbyshire sometime between 1480 and 1520. He's got some dances in there. There's no indication of the style or the precise nature of these dances that are described, but some of them do seem to work really well if they're performed in the style that we've seen on Moresque pictures, and if we include gestures at phrase endings that are based on the hit foot steps that were described in Arbeau's Orchesography of the Moresque. And the other really good thing is that the music fits very, very well on solo pipe and tabor, and that would have been the music for Moresque. Ha-ha!
Right. Woo-hoo. Over to you, Steve.
Ooh. Hang on, I'm just trying to find where I am in the script. So, yes. So, just looking at, we were looking not just at choreography. We weren't really considering Gresley as necessarily being a Moresque choreography. The point was, it was a dance language of that time, and that was an important aspect to us, that we would be taking a lot of different sources and seeing what we could produce. And it was quite extraordinary as we worked through that, bringing in all of that stuff about the wild leaping, the gestures. We had people joining us, academics, on things like medieval grappling holds, because there was a grappling dance. What was a dart and target? There was a dart and target dance. What were these things? And also gestures, looking at the gestures from that period that we documented. There was quite a lot of documentation of that kind of thing. We're also looking at costume and finding things like in the records there was a lot of spangles on costumes, and these spangles were the spangles like you see on the belly dancers costumes, but these were really quite medieval things. They're still produced today, but we find thousands of them in the mud when they were rebuilding or building the Barbican and things like that. So we had quite a lot of information that we're bringing together to add to what Andy was developing with the choreography. Back to Andy.
Thanks, Steve. Okay.
Right, so Prana Guard. This is a dance from Gresley. It's got leaps, doubles, and singles, and it's performed by 3 men. It starts with a movement called the double trace. That could mean using double steps. That's how we've interpreted this, and we've put a phrase ending with the hit right foot, hit left foot, hit right foot, hit left foot, hit right foot again, and a gesture at the end. That's how we interpreted it. So let's have a look at the video.
Just got to find it. Oh, I got it going, and then it what happened to it? There it is, but it's disappeared from my screen here. So why has that happened? Sorry about this. It's disappeared from the screen. Show all windows. Aha. Let's try again. You may have to watch this. Me put this together. Sorry about this. Here we go.
No, that was it.
Ooh. I've got to somehow get rid of that. Right. Good.
Okay, that's over to me.
You want to go back on that?
Yeah. So that was we just seen the double trace, and indeed we've seen the rest of it. So just press on through this then to look at the choreography.
Right. Okay. Now, Prana
We haven't got the screen, Andy.
and Turns.
Hang
I
on.
haven't shared it. Now we come back to you.
Yeah, I know. I'm just trying to share the right thing. Here we go. Yes, hurrah.
Right, so Prana Guard, and it's performed by 3 men using his ending with the end. That's how we in guard. Okay, now Prana Guard leaps and turns. This is the next part of the dance. After the end of the trace, the first man leap, the second leap, the third turn, then the last leap, the second leap, the first turn, the first leap, the last leap, the middle turn. So let's have a look at that on the video.
I'll show that bit. Hang on. Right, let's find that again. We start with the double phrase. Then we get the leaping and turning. There we
Okay.
go.
Thank you.
Hang on.
And then the ending, we've got a set of movements that we ended up calling triangles, forth and retreat. That's because of the shape of the dancers and moving forth and retreating. Then we've got a movement that we called turn, retreat and rake. And we were basically the rake, which is in the manuscript, we're trying as a slightly hook leg like movement. It's very debatable what it is. And then at the end, all at once, a flower de lis, like a fleur de lis, and come together. So so we're doing a step in the shape of a fleur de lis, and then all gesturing for the flower, which the lady then gives to the fool. So let's just see the ending. Ha.
Right, I think that's basically Prana Guard. It's over to you, Steve, to talk briefly about darts and targets, I think.
Oh, darts and targets. Yes. Okay. I need to find a bit of that. Just get the darts and targets. So one of the
sorry.
no, there was something else in between. Grappling.
Yeah, costume and grappling. I'm sorry.
So the costume, we found a specialist in the costume of the period, and we had lots of information, because the majority of information about that mentions Moresk from that period tells you how many lengths of different materials that they used, and we had some iconography on which to base it, and some historical iconography that we could see it was copying. So our costumes were actually made of silk, raw silk, that was hand dyed and hand stitched, and we had these descriptions of the red knight, the green knight, the white knight, and the black knight appearing in different Moresk performances, and so we took those and did the costumes accordingly for those characters. And then there was a martial element to these. They were often put in a context of a tournament and a play tournament, and so some of the dances that described were the dart and target dances, which was involved throwing small swords or small spears at a target, which is a kind of a buckler, but it was a wooden one that you could stick the thing into, and also grappling dances. So there was dances where there were grappling holds, and we did a lot of research on the kind of holds and ways we could do it. Andy, would you like me to go to the grappling dance?
So I can just quickly talk about that for a second.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So we needed a dance with grappling. So we used Libens Distonis from Gresley. It's a dance for two or multiples of two. The dance starts with a trace, and then we had a sequence of grappling with different people grappling with each other. Worked really nicely with the music, actually, and with the jester in the middle at the end. Then we had a rounds at the end, and spinning of the jester, and jester collapses and is revived by a lady. So that's how we did all of that. Let's have a look at the video. It should be fun.
Okay. Hang on, gonna find it first. Start again. Here we go. Look at the ball. I'll stop that there because it goes on pretty much the same all the way through. But I'm looking at it now and realizing two things. One, that this video was filmed by Barbara Siegel, who I believe is watching somewhere. And this was pretty raw before we really got Barbara involved in helping us to adopt some of the styles of the period and our movements. So we had quite a lot of learning to do. This was, I think, our first performance and out. Unfortunately, we haven't got good video of later performances, which got a lot more stylized and a lot more interesting, a lot more theatrical. But that dance was hard work, because the first thing she told us when she saw us do it was, go at each other like you mean it. Don't play at grappling. And so I would end this dance absolutely shattered. Should we have a short section of the dart and target to finish
yes,
up?
So I've just got a quick slide about that actually.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Here we go.
Okay. Right. So
Don't they look young?
Anna's in grey. So we needed a dart and target dance. So we used this dance in Gresley. It starts with a trace forthright 6 singles or single steps. Other tourne, other a boot. So partners clinching targets and striking darts. Circle and rake. Then we got some face-to-face action, a retreat and throw, a fleur de lis of both at once. Change places and tourne face-to-face, fleur de lis and come together. Let's have a look at what that looks like. Woo! Woo!
I can't see it on my. I don't know. Anyway, it's probably here. Here we go. So.
You can't see it. You can't see it. We can't see the video.
Can't see it. No, sorry. Let me try again. Right. Stop share. Let's try this share again. Sorry about that. Let's try this. Oh, I know. Tell me if you see it this time. Is that it? Is that the video? No, no, no.
It has to be. It has to be in a ready. You know, ready.
Yeah, no, it was.
Okay.
I'll try it again. I'll have another go. Stop share. Let's try the share again. It's one of those annoying things that when you share it. Right, let's try this. Is that more likely? So that was the dart and target dance, and yeah, that was quite exciting because we were throwing these spears at each other and had to catch them. We quite fancied at the end of that dance trying to do the feat at the end of the dancer leaping backwards over the sword, but we never quite got that one together. But that's one I really like to see. But did you see it all there? Yep. That was all right.
Yeah.
Jolly good. Should we? We probably need to wrap up without seeing Temperance. Which
no, exactly. Yeah, it's now your final closing remarks, Steve.
Oh, my ones. All right. Okay. Well, it was an interesting project. and it spawned other projects, but it did start to change people's opinions. We did it at a few places, including Sidmouth Folk Festival. Quite a few of Morris people got to see it and spread the word, and gradually after that we started seeing people talking less and less about the pagan fertility theory and understanding that the origins of Morris were a bit more interesting than that. And Forrest's book shows clearly that it, instead of coming from rural pagan fertility sort of things, it comes from a royal court setting, and he shows how it slips down the social scale, and it's quite an interesting thing. After that, one of the things that we did was set up a thing called Reading Morris, which I'll just quickly show a picture of that. This was, can you see Reading Morris there? Yeah. And this was formed to celebrate the 500th anniversary of the first example of Morris dancing in Berkshire, which was in a church setting on the dedication day of the church. And one of the interesting things there was that they had painted coats. They couldn't afford the embroidered silk that we were wearing, and we had lots of records of churches paying for the painting of the coats, and these ones were based on some information from the V&A and from other sources actually. And oops, there we go. I was trying to get it to move on. There's a better image of the coats with the crest from the family there, and wearing the coifs, which we didn't wear in Rose Maresque. And associated with the giants of this one's a Salisbury giant, 500 years old, and even today, if you go to Catalonia on dedication day of the church, of the cathedral, this is in Mataró, they have the giants, and you can see the Taborers playing pipe and tabor behind them, and the musicians, the dancers doing a thing very much like Morris dancing, and they've been doing that for a very long time in that same context that we had before the Reformation. And there's lots of other stuff, but my more recent project going along this line is with a group called Boss Morris, aware of how things have evolved during the 16th century in Moresk and Morris, and then again in the 17th century with the adoption of sets coming from country dance direction. I needed to do something that looked more to the 21st century, and with Alex Merry here at the front, who is a member of a group called Bells of London City, we formed a group of women dancers who dance quite exotically, taking their inspiration from the Maresque and the Morris, and they actually do the grappling dance as well. So along the way, we learnt a huge amount. We've learnt a lot more since, and I'd love to be able to get a fine, fit young group of dancers to do it again, and with the facilities we've got, to film it in a more appropriate setting than the forecourt of Stroud subscription rooms. I'm just very thankful to Barbara Siegel for having the foresight to whip out a camcorder, put a tape in it, and film it back in 2004. Yeah, there we are. Anything else, Andy?
No, I think it's now time for we're exactly on schedule for the questions and answers, I think.
A big thank you to Steve and Andy for a fascinating talk with videos as well. So this is your chance to ask any questions of him. Please type them into the chat and I'll read them out for them to answer. So if you want to direct a question to either Steve or Andy, please make that clear to me. While you're thinking of doing that, I've got a question that I'm going to ask them just to get it going. You talked about the influence of Barbara Siegel on your style. Got to give us a couple of examples of that. I know you didn't have any video to show, but perhaps you could talk it through.
Well, one of the things I really noticed was we looked fairly stiff doing those videos, and our hand movements, we tended to just have one hand movement and a position and things like that. And she really taught us to be much more dramatic, to get lower down, to get more of those shapes that you see in the early iconography, and to be really, not really self-conscious about it, but to go for it. It was a great pity that Andy couldn't partake of this at the time. You had that back injury, didn't you?
Yeah, I was due to have a back operation a few months later, so I had to be the pipe and tabor player and choreographer.
I must say, it is good fun doing it with the girls of Boss Morris, because they're all young and lithe and fit. They will do things. They will bend in all sorts of directions and things. So they make it much more, I think, fitting. I think now if I was to do it, we'd look like the Vienna grotesque Maresque, which I thought might be an interesting thing to do.
What with the sausages on a stick?
Okay, we're starting to get one or two questions, so here we go. From Bob Lawson up in Northumberland, he said, did you look at the record and the 16th century costume of the Perth rapier dancers in Perth Museum? If so, do you know what a shearing rapier is?
Yes, and the Perth set is really, really interesting. It was a bit later than the exact period we were looking at, but it was very interesting. Yeah, and I think it would inspire further work, and particular with the work that Steve Corsin's doing on the sword dancers of Europe. Yeah.
Very good. Jan Guyot says it's sometimes said that the Morris is associated with the old religion, implying this is paganism, but isn't it Catholicism?
It is definitely more associated with religious. I mean, it was the churches that really spread it throughout the country by dancing at the wits and ales. Whether that's Catholicism or whether that is what became really popular, it is still done like that in Catalonia, some other parts of Spain, Basque Country. We lost it. We lost those fantastic processions with the Reformation.
Yes.
And the other thing to say is that in the Cotswolds you had a number of prominent Catholic families who were big supporters of the Morris over the years, especially the family at Stowe House. So you get support for Brackley, and lots of other teams visited Stowe House and got paid to dance there as well.
Jill's commented, she says the Whitsun processions were very much part of the Catholic Church. It also happens in Brittany and so on. Question here, any question from the Morris Majors? Any more hints on music apart from the Gresley manuscripts? And secondly, what was the Arbo tune?
Okay, so the Arbo tune, that's the classic Moresk tune that kind of gets recycled later, and people do use it sometimes today. Yeah, so but that of course is, as far as we know, the source is from France. So.
Okay, what else have we got from people? Comment just a moment while we're getting some more questions in. From Emma Mordew, says she, along with others, had spent quite a bit of time thinking about different ways of interpreting these Gresley dances and like the fit with Morris, and there's lots of food for thought. So, real point of appreciation there.
I think the thing that we felt was we weren't trying to do Gresley. And in fact, lots of people at that time were actively working on the Gresley manuscript, and a lot of interpretations I've seen and I was seeing at the time were very slow, much more in the manner of the Italian Renaissance style, which obviously it could relate to completely, and we were just looking for a language, a dance language to use. It's quite interesting when I hear performances of the Gresley music, you know, there's CDs of it out there now. They're all so much slower and so much less vitality in them
Indeed.
than playing them out the way Andy plays them. You know, lots of life in them.
I mean, they do. Yeah, well, the ones that we used did seem to work really well with those very dynamic phrase endings, with taboring for the hitting of the feet and the gestures. But yeah, I mean, who knows? And it's not even known whether the Gresley manuscript is kind of all dances of one style, or, you know, because he's just writing notes for himself probably. So he would probably know. You know, let's say, for example, if one of them was a Moresque dance and three others were in a sort of something a bit like a 15th century Italian ballo style, he wouldn't probably have to write that out, because he would kind of know that if he was just writing an aide memoir. So you don't even know if they're all in the same style.
Okay, another question from the Morris Majors. So, were there two parallel tracks here of development, the court Morisco and the street busking Morris with the collecting ladle?
Okay, there were three strands. So quite early on, we get a civic processional strand, and you get a number of, I think the earliest one of those is Plymouth. In Plymouth, I think it's 1577. The dancers are retained along with the hobby horse and the Maid Marian and the Robin Hood group in order to appear at different times during the year. And you start to find references to performing with the Midsummer Watch, so part of that procession thing. And John Forrest shows quite well how there's some really good examples of the servants of a big house being the Morris dancers and performing for their entertainment, but then being loaned to the church to perform in the church Whitsun Ale or the dedication day. And there's quite, you know, there are one or two references where the church gives thanks were given to Lord so and so for his servant's Morris dance in the procession and that sort of thing. So you know, there's a very clear movement from that setup. The actual move to busking comes when the Puritans really, well, before the Puritans, during the Reformation, you start getting prosecutions of clergy for allowing Morris in the church on Whitsun. And so what happens then is the church held the costume and rented it to the Morris men, who went out and collected money at Whitsun, and then with the money they collected, they were able to pay for the hire of the costume and keep the rest for themselves. And that really is the start of the cadging tradition of Morris.
Very good. One more question to come, I think, and then we'll wrap up. This is from Jameson. You mentioned guild halls on a couple of occasions. How far do you think the guilds and apprenticeships helped spread the Morris?
Right. I think they were very important. And we find references to the guilds in Morris and other things like mummers and things like that appearing in their events, particularly at Twelfth Night and that time of the thing. And then you next find them in association with the processions, the Midsummer Watch and the like. And after the Reformation, a number of places kept the processions going, but in a civic manner rather than a church procession. And so that enabled Morris to continue as a popular entertainment. It was clearly a popular entertainment, and I think it's through that line that we saw the processional Morris come through, which up in the northwest, you know, was quite a big thing in the 19th century. So yeah, I think the guilds were very important.
Indeed. Right, a big thank you to Steve and to Andy for a fabulous presentation and great question and answer session at the end. So thank you very much, and for managing the interplay between the two of you. It's no mean feat. I'd like to give a quick plug for next month's webinar, which is on Wednesday, the 16th of December at 7 o'clock GMT. We'll be welcoming back Berta Hoffman and Eva Zollner. And they presented earlier in the webinar series, and we're delighted to have them back. This time they're going to be talking about Pride and Prejudice, the truth about Thomas Mann's dancing master Rudolf Knoll. So please sign up for that in the normal way, get your place booked via Eventbrite. We only have 100 places, so if you're late to the party, you'll miss out. This webinar, as I said earlier, is being recorded and will be put up on YouTube tomorrow. For those of you who are members of the Historical Dance Society, and if you're not, this is perhaps a moment for you to reflect on joining this great community through our website. You'll be receiving the link in tomorrow's blog from me, weekly update. So without further ado, a big thank you to Andy and Steve for a fabulous talk tonight. And we welcome you all back next month. Thanks very much and good night.